I'm Michael Sparling.
And that's the
What's
middle of
up?
August. And I wish the weather in Oregon was like this every year because, like I was telling Kip, I mean, we have never had a summer where it's basically between 78 and 87. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. So, I have gotten a lot of horsey time recently. So, and you've been on a trip, and I wonder who's going to remember. So I told Michelle Wednesday in her lesson, I'm like, okay, see you tomorrow. And then I was totally ready for the show. Then I went to visit Corey. And then she's like, and I'm like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. She's like, no.
Show's on Friday.
Oh.
Yes.
Anyway,
Hopefully others remember. Sorry for the schedule shift.
I think it was worth it. So tell
It
us
was
what.
worth it.
Yeah. Good morning, Michelle.
There she is. Uh yeah, I was out in North Dakota, the Badlands. Um it's Theodore Roosevelt National Park. It's 47,000 acres of really, really rough country. It's basically there's coal veins, there's scoria, which is like the sharp red rock, and a lot of clay. So you just lots of stratification in these beautiful buttes. Um, but I mean, it'll be like, well, first of all, you drive across North Dakota and it's just quite flat and grasslands and crop, and then it just drops off. I mean, like literally you look like, oh, we'll just go forever on this flat grassland like we have for the last 60 to 100 miles or much further. And then just boom, drops down, I don't know how many feet. Um, but to drop into the bowl on the park, especially on the east side where we were, it just, you just go off a cliff and go down all these wildlife trails basically. Um, so in the park, you have buffalo, elk, mule deer, coyotes, cougar, wild horses, really unique to a national park. Always with the wild horses, there's controversy. But horses that I grew up, when we talk about the starting Mustangs, these are the horses I grew up riding. Um, both grew up riding before I was working with horses and knew anything, before I was really starting horses. We had one out of the park. And then since, the majority of the Mustangs I've worked with have come out of the park. Um, so what else was in there? Rattlesnakes. We saw a rattlesnake. That was exciting. Massive bull snake, 4 feet long. Lydia almost stepped on the bull snake. That freaked her out. Um, God, what else was there? Oh, antelope, hawks. I mean, like pretty rich with wildlife, and we saw everything but the elk. Um, so it was cool. The country is extremely rugged. So because of largely the clay, um, and I'm not sure why the topography quite right there. I should have looked at the geology of it, but washouts, like even within the park, we came across we came down a place where there's some springs, which there's not a lot of springs. It's very dry and arid, but it was pretty green up this one valley, and we came across, and we're kind of in the bottom, and then you know it just drops off. And this gully that we were trying to cross was probably 30 feet deep or more, and we're talking, you can't go down it. Most of the places it's just like a sheer drop of clay where the water has carved it out. um where, I mean, it's just a straight drop off down to the gully at the bottom, and then quite narrow at the bottom. I mean, like a horse width if you're walking down where the water actually is. There's not a lot of water. It's like runoff, and then the rest of the time it's either dry or just maybe a little water setting in the bottom. So we came across one of those, and there are some older trails down through it, or if you're talking deer, I mean, they're just like skirting. They kind of drop off a little bit and skirt the edge of the gully where there's some shelves and then leap across. So you have these trails that, as far as riding is concerned, or a horse or buffalo, even the wild horses, they if they went down them, it's like a dead end. The cavern has gone so much deeper in recent years. So you're riding along it going, how in the world? Like, we've just come in this area where none of the folks that we've been riding with had ever ridden into the park at this point, or down into the Badlands at this point. And, we were out for quite a ways. I was like, okay, do we backtrack, which none of us wanted to do, or do we just keep searching how to get past this? Which you're always going to find a way. I mean, the wildlife make their way through there somehow, but how far are we going to have to go? Um, so anyway, I found a ravine, and like, growing up, I similar to skiing or snowboarding in the mountains. I'd be like, "Yeah, Dad, let's go this way," and he's like cartwheeling down the mountain. At that point, I mean, getting to the bottom, being like, "What in the hell did we just do? Why in the world do I follow you into this nonsense?" So that's kind of what I did growing up. Was just like up this bluff and slide down the other side, and kind of quite the risk taker on my pony, which I don't know how much of a risk it was on my pony. I think I recently described some of the stuff I got into with my pony where we were lunging up stuff that was like up to the base of their neck, and he had to rear up and get on, hop up it or drop down off something like that. Anyway, so we're back in that country. Now I have this leggy thoroughbred who's never seen anything like this. Um, Even though he was bred and raised in North Dakota, but it was, the flat grasslands part when he was a little baby. So this one ravine was kind of cool. It wasn't ever like a serious drop, but we got rain the day before, which when the forecast says rain out there, you're kind of like, well, we might not be able to ride, because when it's clay, it just like you're in clay with boots on, and the clay like sticks to your foot. You're basically walking with clay shoes on, standing on clay, and it's just completely slick. So it was a little on the slick side. I had shoes on, so I had better traction than some. And it
Rooster.
wasn't, yeah, on Rooster. And it wasn't like the real greasy clay. So everybody was able to manage. But coming down into this gully, it's the kind of the bottom of a ravine that has these springs, so it's a little wetter. We did just get rain the day before. Anyway, we're going down, and it's kind of steepish, then levels out a bit into like a shelf where the gully once was, but then drops down maybe another 6 to 8 feet into the bottom of the gully. And that was, well enough traveled trail that it was, still quite an incline to get down there, and then like 2 feet wide, and then a pretty steep incline coming up. And what you definitely cannot have your horse do in situations like this, particularly like if you're on a shelf that's grassy and then there's a deep gully and a shelf that's grassy on the other side, and your horse kind of jumps over it, provided they clear it, not too bad. You're going from flat to flat. There's grass, it's not slick. Um, so, I mean, that's one thing, and you can cross some pretty deep stuff doing that if your horse is comfortable making the leap and doesn't do the over jump and launch you out of your Western saddle. But I was trying to prevent the just leaping across. But where it's really dangerous, and I actually saw someone flip their horse over backward on them because their horse was not used to this country, pretty well freaking out as a kid, not this weekend, where the horse came to the bottom and was like, looked across to the other side. I was like, I'm going for it. I am not comfortable. And just leapt to the other side, which is like a straight up incline. So the horse leaps, and it's like leaping into a wall, kind of. can't get the traction, and then just flips over backward. And this gal, I believe, was paralyzed after this incident. And there were folks galloping back to get emergency
I
rescue.
had almost exactly the same experience
Yeah,
as a kid.
really.
It was just down a ravine instead of trying to get across like that. But yeah,
Hmm.
huh?
Yeah.
How do we
So
not know that about each other?
yeah, it was wild. I mean, it was scary as a kid. Um, and now here I'm kind of on that horse where it's like this horse has no clue how to navigate any of this. It's all like, this is really steep, and a lot of the trails even are like a foot and a half, 2 feet deep as you're going down pretty steep country. Or maybe there's a few trails and some of them are quite deep and some of them not so deep because of the erosion where these trails are formed, the horses, buffalo,
So
whatever.
they're dry creeks, basically.
Well, now I'm talking like trails, right? So the horse comes off, you know, some slope up on top, and they're like, okay, well, we'll go down here. Everybody goes. Well, then enough time goes by, the erosion carves that out to where the trail is like 2 feet down from the ground on either side. And there might be some other trails that are less eroded, but oftentimes the most eroded one is the one you want to take, because this one up here they only took when the main one was super muddy, and that one's kind of sketchy because it drops off on the other side. So in a lot of cases, you're going up and down with a horse's feet inside of a trench, essentially, that's a foot and a half deep, right? So,
Like 2 feet wide.
what's that? Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, the width of a single track trail at a horse. So, we're doing this, and then Rooster's like, I don't know about that. And you're in a trench. You're like, if they try to get out of it, they're kind of stumbling out of it. Just, it doesn't matter who they are, even with his long legs. And then he's worried. So I mean, this is just pretty sketchy country. And like I said, you're across the top, and then you just drop in. There's no like easing into it, at least on the side of the park where we were. If you trailer down into the park and you kind of start out on the flat, well, you can really pick and choose. I'm going to go up and over this butte and down the other side. And this is a well worn trail that has gradual rises. And let's go find a super well worn path through these gullies. Well, we dropped in somewhere that was not well worn paths that were used, and I mean, it was just right into the rough. So I mean, it was a lot for him. He didn't know how to go down steep. Well, he could go down steep on his butt pretty easily because he was sketched out. But when it was time to go up, he's like, I am gotta like lunge up this thing if I'm gonna get up there. Um, and probably the first rise we did, it wasn't one of those where they're like heaving and hoeing and catching their breath because you're going from the bottom all the way to the top in one run. It was out of a ravine that was down in there. And I don't know, I don't know elevation what it was, but lengthwise, if you're looking at the incline, probably 8 horse lengths from the bottom of the incline to the top and pretty steep. So he wanted to lunge up. Stephanie, you're not selling this as a trip we should all go do. You're right. Yeah, we could start smaller. I just said that, right? But yeah, where we start, it's intense, but it's fun intense and it's beautiful and you see all the wildlife. Did you miss that part?
It's like, no thanks.
Yeah, true. It's not where you want to learn to trail ride, right? So I knew what I was getting into, even though I was on a horse that this was going to be a major challenge for. So anyway, that first slope, I mean, he wanted to lunge up it, and you're trying not to hold him back to where he's trying to lunge, and then you're gonna flip him over, but trying to set the precedent right off the bat. We don't just leap up these things, and so that was something he had to learn, and took a little doing. Um, but he made it through that. Anyway, back to this gully that I found the sort of sketchy trail into. So you're sliding down because it's a little greasy at the bottom. The last probably 15 feet, they just kind of slide down into the mud. And he's like got his legs off on the side of the trail, trying to keep himself from sliding in. Anyway, we get toward the bottom and he just kind of leaps, but I was bending him, like saying you cannot leap. And so he just kind of fell sideways across to the other bank. Thankfully, it was like multiple trails coming out of there and some grassy area between the trails, but the trails are probably a foot and a half down on either side in this grassy area. So he stumbles up into the grassy area and like, well, that's not how we need to do this. So then I bring him back through on the other side. It's not as quite as steep coming in, so we could get in there and sort of step across, but also kind of scramble up the side that was a little steeper coming in that was kind of greasy. Anyway, we made it up out the other side. And the next time we came down, and this is kind of what you do strategy wise if you have a horse that's coming up to a narrow water crossing and you can tell this horse is going to leap over this, you'll kind of, assuming you have connection to the feet and you don't just have a rubbernecking horse. Like in this case, I was coming down and I bent him to the right, which if you look at looks left, but bent him to the right to basically face him up the ravine, which that alone can be sketchy too, because then they go up the ravine and now you're stuck and they have to back down because it's so steep on the sides. Anyway, I got him down there and we're standing in like soupy clay with standing water and he decided to drink the water. The water was disgusting, but I'm like, okay, if we stand here and you're thirsty, here we go. And we went down in, and because I bent him and said we can't leap up the other side, we landed in the bottom. And he was like, "Oh." And because there was water, like it was,
Where are
you
you
know,
going
it was
down?
fine. Huh?
Where are you going down? Sinking?
No, not sinking. But I mean, he was probably in 6 to 8 inches of wet, sloppy clay before it was firm enough. I mean, he had splattered clay all over his nose and his chest after this, and it's like white chalkiness once it dries out. And so then we came up the other side after he stood there for a while, and I was like, "Yeah, badass. That's how we need to do it." Obviously, I had to really help him that second time, but the whole thing was fairly controlled. He was thoughtful coming out of it. I was like, "Yeah, that's the way to go." So that's a little bit of what I was dealing with my thoroughbred who'd never faced this country before. Um, there's another person on the ride whose horse was really worked up, did all right on the up and down, but just really charged and couldn't stand still. And then would sort of settle in, but then would have trouble again. You see a buffalo, and all the horses are like, wow, especially those who haven't seen the buffalo. Or up on top, we saw basically there was like three bands of horses, but they were all kind of hanging out together. And I always wondered why when you drive west and you come up on the park on the plateau before it drops in, there's almost always wild horses and a few buffalo that you can spot in that southeast corner. Um, and I'm always like, why are they over here? Because the river, the Little Missouri River, the main water coming through the park is on the far, far west end of the park. But I didn't know there was these springs there, like that area we went down. So that's why you'll see the horses up on that side and some buffalo occasionally because they do have that water source there. Anyway, as we're coming along the rim, um, because the second day we probably rode 5 miles, 6 miles along the rim up on top where it's just like grasslands before dropping in by that spring area. Because it was slick and we're trying to find somewhere that's not as steep to come in. Any case, there were two bands of horses that were kind of together, and then a group of three bachelors. And so we saw the two bands that were kind of close by, 13 horses, and they're all like eyeballs on us. And Rooster and this other horse were kind of a little antsy still. So they didn't really want to come close to us. But I guess sometimes if you get stopped, the horses will actually kind of circle around you to check you out, which can be kind of cool. At one point, they kind of went thundering down across this valley, all grasslands, and then came up, popped up again, and they're all you know, watching us. But you have, you know, it was a ways away, but you have studs screaming at each other as and mostly they were trying to drive off the bachelors that were hanging on the edge. But I mean, they're squealing out there and snorting, and that was kind of what Rooster wasn't so sure about. Um, so we were kind of busy doing our thing. Um, and like if I didn't have the ability to balance him, round him, get him hooked on to my idea and soften into something more relaxed, it would have just been managing chaos and a lot of pounds and a lot of muscle. And so it was, we couldn't hang for long in some of these scenarios. Um, Particularly get nice and settled, and then someone in the group would trot off without really any thought as to where anyone else is or what their horse were doing. And then he would kind of really want to go. And depending on his mentality, sometimes he'd go with them. Other times it's like, well, they're on the other side of this rough stuff. And so we got to kind of get our poop in a group before we go crossing all this and catch up to him. And so lots of just getting him back with me and, um, to where we can settle and head off again. Or with the horses is like get settled and then stand for a while and just like wide eyed looking at these horses. What are they doing? Because they're out there monkeying around and snorting. And so that was kind of fun up on that same rim before we dropped in where there's, not the gullies that just sneak up on you or the prairie dog holes. We went for probably a 3/4 mile gallop. Um, that was not a racehorse gallop like I did the other day on that trail ride. And that felt really, really good. It was a very slight incline, and Lydia's out behind us, galloping and cantering along and
And
doing
was
one ring
on,
stops occasionally because she's like, I don't want to go. So I
was,
kind of left everybody.
who was she on?
She was on Brody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it was cool. I mean, I didn't really even have to think about her. She's on a full size horse, not a pony. She almost, well, I told Eva, she said, how was it? And I said, well, I only almost died once, and or something like that. I almost yeah. So right early on there was one point where Rooster was coming up something and was surging, and I was like, whoa, whoa, we can't do that. And he just kind of squirreled around, went sideways, and we just come up this ravine, and there's like a hole here and another trail there, and it's not a super wide area. It like drops off here and there. And it's not the place to be throwing yourself around. So um, that was the only time that was pretty sketchy for me. At one other point, someone that um, Lydia was right behind. It was this narrow gully, but there was a tree hanging down, and everyone else had kind of gone around that gully trail, like the washed out main trail to avoid this tree that it was hanging down over it. So they went around on a less traveled trail, just like a few feet over, but it was, grassier and wasn't as obvious a trail. Well, this gal's horse started up that ravine, and she's like, no, we're going to get scraped off in this tree, and tried to direct him over to the other thing. And like I said, if you're down 1.5 feet and you're like trying to get out of that, that's a big step up to the side to try to. So her horse went down and was kind of like almost splayed out. And that was two horses in front of Lydia. And then the next horse started backing up because this horse in front of it was falling down basically. And so then Lydia had to back down. Like she wasn't in the gully yet, but we were on a pretty good incline. Had to back down and swing Brody's front end away to give room to this gal that was kind of backing into her. So that was the only other sort of sketchy moment. Even though I described this whole thing as pretty wild and sketch, like I knew what the terrain was, I knew what to expect. My horse did not. So for most people, I think the whole thing on my horse would have felt very sketchy, but I knew how to manage it. I knew the terrain I was in. I knew the things to watch for. Um, so like in one sense, I was very pleasantly, not presently surprised. I kind of got what I anticipated having. Like there'd be times where he would just kind of settle in and be a rock star, but I also knew it was going to be a lot for him, and it was going to be at times a lot to manage. Um, so I was really happy with him. Other times it's like, my God, when are you going to settle into this? And it was actually interesting um the things that would upset him were not consistent. Like sometimes it was like horses leaving when they just suddenly trot off around a butte and then he couldn't see them. Then he'd get a little antsy. Other times that didn't matter at all. Sometimes the buffalo bothered him, other times they didn't. Um, the inclines were upsetting at first because he thought he needed to lunge up them. Then we settled into that. But other times, if I try to say, whoa, whoa, rate yourself, his emotions got up even later in the game. So it was a little bit varied. You know, basically everything we did at one point or another during the four rides we did, three rides we did, he really, really did well at it, and we were just kind of rolling along. He didn't need any help. Um, but at one point or another, pretty well any of those situations that might cause him stress or bring up his anxiety did at one point or another, and we had to manage it. Um, so I was really happy with how he did. Brody did fantastic. He'd never been out there, kind of didn't for sure know how he'd do. So the the first ride it was kind of long. I mean, it was like 4.5 hour ride, but I was a little bit picky choosy as to where we went in as best I could be. But like I said, you kind of just drop in and you're entered up. But it was dry that day, so trails were not at all slick. And I was kind of watching Lydia at first, and then I had enough to manage with Rooster. It was just Brody also wanted to kind of lunge up things, but Lydia did a good job of telling him to use his butt. And then almost every uphill after that, she's like, "No, Brody, use your butt. Use your butt." So he got to where he could just march and push up things, and so they did great.
What a good confidence builder for her. That's
Yeah.
cool.
And then there were times where he was like kind of wanting to trot up and catch the other horses, and there were a couple times where he just always wants to trot. I'm like, well, you know what to do about that. And um, trails were like just or rides were like just long enough that it was stretching her, but not so long that she completely lost it. One ride, I thought we were a lot further out than we were, and so I think she started getting hungry. Um, her jeans were rubbing, and so she was a little uncomfortable. And she's like, "Dad, how much further?" I'm like, "Well, I think we're about as far as we're gonna go. We're like headed back now. It might be another 2 hours." And she just started crying. Like, oh great, this could be a long trip back. Um, and so I just ignored her after that, like let her have her emotion rather than try to do it. And so I keep looking back and she's just weeping quietly. And then like Mary Lou, the gal that has spent the most time out there recently, was like, okay, this next one we're probably gonna have to take a breather part way up. I'm like, oh geez, let's see how my horse thinks about stopping. But it was a long enough haul, like they needed a breather, so he stopped halfway up and was like, I will gladly stand here on this incline and catch my breath. But we came up that very, very long incline um, without any breaks, any respite from the incline without outside of just stopping and catching their breath and popped up on top. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're like right there. I can see the east fence and all of that. And I'm like, all right, girl, we've only got about a half hour. And she said, oh, good. So, but then the next day we did, the same thing, a long 4.5 hour ride. And that evening, she and I went out together, and Rooster was doing great until we saw some mule deer, and that freaked him the hell out. And um, so yeah, it was a ton of fun. Brody did great. Lydia did great. Rooster was in and out of being great, like a rock star compared to, having never done anything like this. And because I hope for the best, but I also really was not confident he was going to be able to just settle in. And he didn't. He didn't just settle in. I had to support him a bunch. Um, but you never know. I mean, it is extremely sketchy if your horse is like all over the place, and you are kind of dropping in going, I don't really know how he's going to respond to this, and can I keep him lined out enough for us to stay safe if he absolutely loses his shit. And there was only that one time where he really did kind of panic and completely burst out of the rectangle, and I'm like, oh god. Stepped in a hole, didn't go down, but is just stumbling all over. Not right here. And Lydia was right behind us. So
Hmm.
it, it was fun. I mean, more than he was way more to manage than any horse I had, obviously, growing up out there. And if I didn't know what I was getting into, it would have been terrifying. But I absolutely knew
Yeah, yeah.
completely what I was walking into, and how I knew the horse I had and how much I could maintain the rectangle or not, or where he, there's times where you pick up the rein, and like I said that last time, he'll hit racehorse mode. And this wasn't racehorse mode, but it was definitely, I'm not paying attention to your seat in the least. And so the reins are the only thing holding me back, but it's like it just charges up the engine and he's trying to surge through it. Um, which, as a kid, I wasn't concerned with the quality of what my horse was giving me. We were just plodding down the trail, and then also going, how much is this going to cost me? And all of that, and now you're making all those calculations here, but it's like, well, I want him to get good about this. And so here's our exposure, and it's a little bit sink or swim, just given the country we're in. And again, Stephanie, if we go out there, we could start elsewhere. That wouldn't be quite so intense. Um, and if your horse just goes down the trail, it's not really that intense. I mean, there are trails, and you know, you, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have made it sound so insane. It was a little insane on a.
I think on the off the track, they're
Yeah,
on hot, big, giant horse like that. I
yeah,
think one's perspective can be uh,
yeah.
by that.
Well, I mean, what was cool is, I mean, at any point where we got some, enough of an open space, whether it be halfway down and it leveled out, and you're up against this clay butte, and the ground is basically clay hard pack, but level as can be, you know, we could just dance around and get him settled. And or maybe he is already settled at that point, and just do our thing. And you know, I could shape the rectangle, and he didn't feel any different in my hands than he would other times. Um, that day where we were galloping along the top of the rim, along the rim right before we saw the wild horses. I mean, I wasn't pushing him at any point into like a hand gallop, but we were pretty open, and then I could just gather him up and rate it back. And, um, so the adjustability remained there when his emotions weren't kind of flying off the handle. And then if they did, I get him back, and it's like, well, you kind of feel
Did you hear that part though?
what, the flying off the handle?
It was really good, except for when he was emotionally flying off the
Yeah.
handle.
Well, what I'm saying is it wasn't like it was destroying the soft feel and the ability to take it through his body, even though in moments it was like, this is not going through your body. I am more or less containing you with the reins, saying, no, we're not going to lunge up this hill, because all the hoarseness in you is saying, I've got to leap to get up this, because you have no experience going up anything steep. It's all been, rolling hills, gradual stuff.
Michelle,
Yeah.
I think you need to try eventing, specifically cross country. Aha. Yeah. Adrenaline.
He would probably love it.
Yeah, well, so one thing that though that does occur to me just in your last little bit of talking there is just how awesome that kind of exposure is. However, you can wreck your horse
Hmm.
one day. You can take a non-herd bound horse and make them obsessively herd bound.
Yeah.
You
Well,
can wreck your soft feel, you can wreck your rectangle, you can wreck, like, because the point is that while you had points of really really having to manage things, and I think this is the game changer, right? Is like, it doesn't so long as you're not over horse, which you weren't, even if you have moments of extreme, I don't know, extreme stress, or really needing to support your horse and are at the edge of chaos, and melting down, so long as you don't just go by that. That's the thing, once or twice of that, and now you have nothing, versus you thinking all the time about the rectangle, not trying to force it into what you have at home,
hmm
but being aware and being like, look, we have to head back towards.
well, and yeah, and knowing when and where I just had to contain, because there was no room to work on it. And if I was too focused on it has to be and feel this way, like he had to move his feet, and the only way to move his feet was forward, and I had to contain it as best I could
Direct it.
and push. Well, straightforward. There was no directing. It was saying we are not lunging forward,
Oh,
and it just feels awful. I mean, you basically are pulling on two reins, but then knowing like that's what I have to do right now, but having the ability, both the history, the horse, you know, he knows how to be soft. He knows all the movements. I have the resources. We have the language to be able to settle him in after that. And again, it felt good that when we were able to have the space to use lateral work, to back arcs, to move out a little bit, maybe do some short serpentines, whatever. I mean, I was using everything that you'd get that all back, even though for a stretch there it was like, this is not taking us forward, right? I'm just containing him. But on the whole, going, like I said, this is a really good exposure. And with repeats, we are going to, you're going to get better about this. But yeah, it would have been pretty awful feeling if I wasn't able, like he was just, but I mean, you're not going to have that as long as you have spots Like at
And
the very end, he got a little surgy. I'm like, you guys go ahead. And Lydia and I just went off up a different trail, landed up on the rim in a different area. And, then I was working with him, and um, Lydia was kind of dinking with some of the same stuff, doing hindquarters, forequarters, which she hadn't, I mean, she wasn't doing any of that out there. So she was just playing around, and I got him back with me, but we were in the back, and another horse was really having trouble and really surging. And so we were getting left behind because I wasn't just going to let him dance around and chase up these other horses' tail through such rough up and down stuff. Um, so he'd been so good, and I'm like, oh crap, I don't want to like end with this. I'm like, you guys just go, we're going over here. And then I got him back, and then we just made it all the way home, trotting and doing arcs and following rein and loose rein. I mean, just really nice. Um, to your point, I was like, you could really wreck your horse if I didn't know to do any of that where I had the opportunity. And I'd just be like, oh, sweet relief. We're in a place where stopped, and you just don't get any of that lightness back, or your horse is only settled because now they're stirrup to stirrup with the horse that they feel security with. Um, yeah. I mean, there's one guy who was very busy. His horse the whole time was having difficulty. And to watch it was like, whew. Um, so much of the problem was, we're moving the hindquarters, but it's not connecting to the feet, where um, it was a lot of basically hindquarter yields and small circles, but everything was keeping the horse out of balance. And so the emotions never really settled. But I mean, what are you going to do in that situation? You can't help anyone learn how to move their horse or talk to them about balance when they're just managing chaos. And to a degree, in rough country like that, or like if you go out to the mountains, sometimes you let the terrain just take care of it. Like that long, steep uphill with Rooster, he was happy to stop in the middle of an incline because he wanted to catch his breath. Well, if it's all just short uphills and you're letting them surge and they're not settling at the top, and you just do that over and over, you're just kind of making it worse. So, um, I think even that horse, or Rooster, certainly, if we had another 3 days out there, he would have been like, screw this monkeying around, and he's getting comfortable with the up and down, and I don't really have a whole bunch of excess energy to waste when they're off over there because I'm pretty tired. This has been a lot of work. Save your energy. The rough country can alone get your horse to settle in, provided you're not ending up in a wreck on the way there. And it doesn't necessarily carry if um
you weren't a
if,
part of it. I think that's a
yeah,
great point. Yeah.
if you weren't a part of it, and if it's just a one-off, right? Hey, Levi, close that door, please. Levi, can you close the door, please? Thank you. If you weren't a part of it, and even there, if you don't repeat it, like that's the thing with Rooster, is like, okay, now I have to repeat this, whether it be hauling out to North Dakota, which is exhausting. My dad was saying, oh man, I always felt like this is so far away when I was 3 hours away and lived in Bismarck. North Dakota it was about 3 hour drive for him, and now we're out here and it's like 9 hour drive. He's like, I wish I was out here so much, more frequently when we lived that close. Because yeah, I left and I'm like, oh, and here's Bismarck moments later. I'm like, that was not a very long drive. Um, and we were out there quite a bit when I was growing up, but um, I think my dad wishes he'd done it more. So, but I mean, to just get out, I mean, I don't know. It's certainly next level. I can't, to go up and do more at Governor Knowles with the wide sandy trails where we were just playing racehorse a month or two ago is certainly very much challenging the ability to be very accurate and yet end up in those situations where everyone's leaving that can bring a horse's emotion up or open him up and then being able to rate it back and all those things are taking off into the trees and some sort of deer trail, which around here it's too thick, you can't do that. That's the other nice thing out there is like there's a million trails and you can just kind of go behind a butte and disappear from everyone and then come back. And but if I don't continue getting him out, then it's like a one-off. And really, in this case, I would have liked to have a couple more days to just get to where, in the end, we'd go out, we do the ride, we come back. It was just a thing we did, um, and not just letting the country and the terrain and him getting tired over days do the whole thing. But it certainly would have been a factor, ride over ride over ride. Same as teaching them any movement, like, okay, this is how I settle into it, how I understand the job, I understand what the goal is, I understand how to move my body. Of course, it's different when you have the whole context of all of the factors that go on in a trail riding situation over against teaching a movement that's like one thing and you can go there and oh all these components and the horse goes oh okay I understand that. Here we're saying, oh, I understand I need to save my energy. I'm going to go up and down, and horses are going to like, there's all those myriad of factors. But with enough repeats, the horse can gain confidence in, okay, we're going to get together. I will make this, save my energy. So,
Hmm. Yeah, like Michelle said, the theme of the heart and soul this week um, seemed to be field trips. Yeah, I've thought a lot about that recently. Yeah, Michael, it's a great point. Let's say good morning to everybody. Michelle, Steph, Corey, Lisa, good morning. I think that's it. Remind me who more Trey is?
that's Pepe's owner, Christine.
Christina. Christina, right?
Christina, yes, sorry.
Okay, just making sure.
We have Christine, or we have Christina and Diane, and I always have to think with Diane, is it Diane or Diana? Which I've known her for years, but for whatever reason, I'm always wondering about the A. And then Christina is friends with Diane. So then that just compounded the problem. It's like, which one has the A and which one doesn't?
The only reason I remember is because my middle name is Christina. And
Oh,
so,
okay.
right, okay. Yeah. Um, how excited are we for Peppy, by the way? I can't wait till she's safely here and then we don't have to stress about it. Yeah, field trips. Having enough tools that you can do support, that you can survive, that it can turn into a good experience, and then calculating, right? I was thinking about um how that's a huge part of like a price tag on a horse is because if you do a good job and you're taking one horse out at a time, or you know what I mean, is like wow, that's a lot of time and
Mhm.
driving and all of that, and it's so beneficial, for the horse. I think of, my little string and actually having time to one by each take these horses out. And it's like, and it just makes such a difference if you can do it. Even a few makes a difference, but you think of if you can do it well.
Yeah.
And which also I was thinking it makes your friends who are good buddies that can go out and take care of each other's horses, and have that be part of the experience. Like, if I have to hang around and do short serpentines and go far, or just hang around, let's just say, while you do short serpentines, and like I'm not too far, and you can say, can you come back a little ways? And I just go over there, or okay, stay there, I'm going to get farther, or whatever. Being the support person is really fun too, because then, like you're saying, you're doing a job
Hmm.
for your friend. Sometimes you can switch back and forth, and sometimes you're there as the support person, and sometimes you're there like, who you want to come be my support person, because I'm not sure how good this is going to go, or people that it's okay if you get off,
Yeah.
and work whatever through something. So you have to plan ahead in situations like where you and I both live, where it's an investment of time. And there's only so many weekends that it's doable to be outside.
Yeah.
Michelle, you kind of have an easier deal in some ways just because you have outside all year and you can find, well, I think you can find some indoor arenas. But she was commenting, Michelle, you were commenting that, her horse, because they live in southern Texas, that her horse just doesn't get into indoor arenas. So that is the thing. Versus like here, horses get very comfortable a lot of times in indoor arenas. Um, but when the summer comes, it's like, you have all the activities in your regular life to do, plus get your horse to the beach, to the trail obstacle course, to the forest, to the and so if you get a horse that's been out and about, 2 clinics, let's say, one of the best things I was thinking about this too is like when Gary would come to do the colt starts here, and just having your horse stand around outside the pen. There's just some drama, and you have that going on at your place. So yeah, peppy in one place piece. It's gonna be such a good feeling. Uh, Diane says I trail ride a lot, and a good riding partner is very important. We have many times switched roles. Yeah, and it's actually, it's kind of funny because Corey and I were out the other day, and um, I was just thinking it really is fun for me to be the support person. Like, first of all, how cool is it that you can be on a horse that's a support horse? Not that my horse is perfect, but you know what I mean. I love that. I love that. And of course, it's amazing if you have other people around that are supportive too. Um, Switching roles, yeah, all of that. Like, hey, I'm on a horse that's never been out before. Are you cool if we only go like 1 mile from the truck? uh, let's see, Brenda. I thought you were gonna say I have a billion horses. You don't have a billion horses? Are you kidding me? Not even close. I do have an indoor an hour away that we're going to start going to haul in. I'm curious to see if it's actually a deal breaker for him. Yeah, that'll be interesting. I mean, it is a big deal. And, or like our horses, let's say, sometimes at the beginning of the season here, I don't think you've experienced this maybe, Michael, but the first really stormy weekend where the rain is on the roof and the doors are blowing around, and like, and the horses are like, oh man, you know?
Speaking of storms,
Oh yeah, that was so crazy. That
excuse me.
was crazy.
Yeah. So,
We should, y- you should send me, or let me know if it's okay to post that on our
yeah.
little deal here.
So, one day we were in town. The town close by the park is Medora, North Dakota. It's pretty tourist destination. So we drove into town one night, and I'm so glad I drove my truck because at the the ranch or the place we were is called 40 acres, and it's basically a 40-acre pasture. Like straight up, that's all it is this grassland North Dakota pasture with it's pretty primitive with just one building with a screen porch and a fence around it. And then everyone just parks their trailers, turns their horses loose. Now there's a few pens, and I didn't trust my thoroughbred to not just go tearing off and not see the fence, even though he was kind of raised in big country in North Dakota. So I kept him in a pen, but all the other horses are just running around loose on 40 acres, and you have to go catch them up in the morning. So really cool setup like that in and of itself is a somewhat unique experience. But anyway, we drove into town, took my truck. I don't know how that got me to describing the site, but uh there was a hailstorm came through, but in town it was just like sprinkles. Oh, this is what I was describing. So there's no shelter for any of the horses. It's like very bare bones. The pens don't have shelter. There's no like it's open grasslands. There's no trees. There's no anything. And there was a storm that came through, hailstones. All the trucks that were out there had body damage. The vents on the top of everybody's horse trailers and RVs were punctured. The plastic vents were all broken out. And my horses are in two pens. Even if they were out on the 40 acres, there was no shelter whatsoever. They're just running. And the people that were at the camp at that point were like, yeah, everybody that was out in the 40 acres was just running around crazy because the hailstones were 2 inches across,
They were
probably at
huge.
least. Very, very big. The video I sent you was actually some time after the storm, like when we got back. One of the gals that was there put some hailstones right after the storm into the freezer. I forgot to look at them and get a picture to get perspective on how much they shrunk before we got there and the ones I had picked up. But I mean, I had 3 hailstones in my hand, and it was more or less filling my hand. I probably could have put one more in my hand with my palm open and had them all there, but a fifth one would have stacked on top of the other. I mean, that's how big these hailstones were. And my horses were just in a pen, I'm sure, butt to the wind, just taking it. I'm like, wow, that had to hurt. There weren't any welts on them. No one was knocked out, but yeah, crazy.
I'll
So,
try to if I have a second afterwards, I'll put it in posts here in
yeah.
our little channel. Yeah,
Um,
it was wild to see because I guess I've never really looked them up, the ones that are huge like that. And how long typically? How many minutes?
I don't know how long this was. We didn't get the hail in town,
Do you
so
think one
I've got
minute, 10 minutes, like
no
uh
idea. I mean, it generally with hail doesn't go on and on and on. So yeah, somewhere in minutes rather than 45 minutes or
oh
something.
no.
That'd
Yeah.
be yeah. The
Yeah,
hail goes through and then you have rain sort of thing.
yeah. We have hail here, of course, but just pellets. They'll look
Yeah.
like snow pretty soon, but yeah. Christina, I keep thinking about the corn sweat. You will always get credit for, in my mind, for being the one to teach me about it.
A what?
Corn sweat. Because, I just never.
Oh, corn sweat.
Corn sweat.
Didn't hear what you said. Yeah.
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 Well, that also,
Contributing to the um humidity.
yeah. And the humidity drawn by the corn, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's so, the,
That was tough coming back because the temperatures were about the same when we got back to Wisconsin, but it felt so much hotter because of the humidity. Like in North Dakota, outside of there was one day where the sun was really direct, where it was like, I got to get back. It's getting pretty hot, but the breeze help. I mean, there's all the factors but not having the humidity in North Dakota, I was able to be out with temperatures being higher. Where here that temperature with the humidity is like just stifling.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. Well, pretty fun experience. So you guys, um, we have, well, how many? We have 6 weeks of good weather. You too, right? Here we do. Yeah. But, the days are going to get shorter bit everywhere. So where are your top few more places that you're going to go, you guys, this year? Um, you know where I would love to go this year, if possible, is the beach. Because I still haven't done that. But I want to go with, I mean, people get hurt every year at the beach, of course, because depending on what crew you're with, it can be a little dicey. So um, I sure would like to go with a few people that are willing to do it for the fun of it, not with an agenda. But it'd be really cool. And so close here. So that would be on my list. And I have a couple other places.
have I ever described where I grew up? We uh we had about 8 acres, I think, a house and pasture and everything. And then it was on a big loop, a gravel loop, and you could ride. Well, first you could ride the loop in the ditch, and just that's where I described my pony jumping the culvert, the ditches with the cart. Anyway, you go down, and there was an easement into what we called the government land. I think it was just state land, but it was basically a floodplain, because we had a creek on one side and the Missouri River on the other, and particularly in the spring there'd be ice jams and it would back up, and our place actually flooded a couple times. But down south there, one winter it actually flooded and then froze, and it was like a, I don't know, massive, like 40-50 acre ice skating rink. In the winter we went skating so much that winter. It was so cool. Anyway, in the summer when we're not skating, uh it was just sand, similar to the trails that was up north where we're racing Peppy and Rooster. um but there is sandbars, and the river shifted a lot through there because it was so sandy, and so you'd end up with these deep pools, and the river was super dangerous. You would not want to swim in this river. But as it would come around, particularly at the confluence of this creek and the river, you'd end up with these massive sandbars, but they had big holes in the middle where the water was flowing through there, and it rerouted. So you'd have these you know holes big enough and deep enough that the horse had to swim to get across them. And so we would both go swimming across these basically like little lakes, and not huge, but again, far enough the horse had to swim, deep enough the horse had to swim, and then just long stretches of what was essentially a beach, not as long as a ocean beach, obviously, but enough to get a good gallop in before you ran into the bank on the other side. So yeah, that was fun to grow up riding that. Kind of took it for granted at that point. I mean, rode there all the time, but as a kid, you're not thinking, "Oh, this is so special that I have this." And oh,
That sounds really fun and cool.
no,
Hmm. Emily says she's going to go to a working equitation practice. Yeah, see if we like it. The other day I was thinking like I will go anywhere where the footing is good, and people are nice. There's just only so many places you can go where it's well organized and friendly. And, I hear that. Side note, I certainly don't see working equitation around my area. I think like there's a lot in Washington, but you guys correct me if I'm wrong, anyone from here, but I'm like, okay, well, I don't even think there's anything for me to go to around here that's within a day's, like a day trip kind of. But what I keep hearing, Michael, I think I've said this before, but I'll be interested for you guys to report back, is well organized, friendly. That's what I and like kind of something for everyone. Because everyone's seen the top of the sport where you're just like, oh my god, that's so cool, that's crazy. Okay, well, that's one thing, that's one thing, and it is cool. But having a friendly environment that has something for everyone, no matter what level you are, is a whole nother thing. So to have both is pretty amazing. To be fair, at the horse center, it's kind of spendy. Oh, interesting. Yeah. The only thing is the horse center, we can always go to the horse center, which is awesome. I love that. But be nice if there were like, I'm thinking of some of the awesome dressage facilities around here. You guys that have private arenas that are amazing. Big, perfect footing. Sweet. More places to go. Like that. So anyway, oh, you guys, speaking of which, I do have a place that's big and has footing that I think we've been invited to, but I would like to go with friends because it's a little, yeah. Peppy was made for working expectation. No kidding. Duh. Yeah, totally. She really was. Lisa, I want to act, but it's pricey and usually conflicts with something else, like a dang clinic. I know, really, like like a dang clinic. I know. We have a clinic this weekend. I'm really excited. Oh, I have a new exercise, Michael. I'm super excited to teach everybody. And we'll do some videos for Trip Insider.
What'd you think of that podcast I sent you? We haven't had a chance to talk about it.
Which one did you send me?
It was the Rupert, is it Isaacson's podcast, and that guy was
I
whereas
don't.
the spine connecting to the joints of the hind leg, and I mean,
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to listen to it.
you
Or
haven't?
no, 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 no. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. We haven't had a chance to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And you probably only listened to the small section I recommended, or the whole thing was pretty interesting. I haven't looked the guy up that he was interviewing, but
I did.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Um, he interviewed Karen Rohlf too. That was really interesting. Karen's
mhm.
the best. Karen's so good. My favorite. Well, there's
David
so.
Lichman too. I listened to it.
Oh, I did.
A few
Yeah,
of them. Yeah.
yeah. He has good. InStride is really good, and then Rupert definitely has uh good people. Sometimes you have to search for the within the podcast for a few things, but um yeah, I got to thinking how awesome Karen is on so many levels, and she brings such a sense of,
Fun.
yes. Here's the thing that she does. She bridges or she mixes like so many of the elements. Corey, you listen to Karen, right? I bet you can hear how much she's influenced me. I'll just bet you. And so the true pure childlike love of the horses, plus she's freaking smart and organized, plus she's done all the things. So, everything from building Grand Prix horses, working for one of the top, young riders for 4 years, blah, 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 all the things, So the way that she talks, and she's like this in real life too, she's very kind and generous. But it comes from such a quiet confidence of, the whole show me your horse thing. She could show you lots of horses since she was like 15. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's so relaxing to listen to her, especially because she's such a pleasant person in her presentation and very like I wish I could be more like her in terms of not bratty, not judgy, not snobby, and yet still has the everything to back it up, you know. So anyway, that was a pleasure to. She has lots of content, but I hadn't really listened to her in a while, so it just popped up I think after the one that you had sent me. So
Mhm.
the podcast is on all the platforms here on Spotify and iTunes. Cowboy dressage. Yeah, I don't think we have seriously, Lisa. I think we have to go to Eastern Oregon for that stuff. I was thinking the whole time how much you and she, yes, because she influenced me. Like all of that was in me, but Karen has been a huge influence on me, especially in my 30s, just because I respected her so much, and she's just steadfast in like, I have horses because I love horses. That's it. And I can also be technically awesome and intellectual as well. Don't you think, Michael?
Yeah, that's a good description.
She's done it all.
Yep.
Bareback and breathless, Grand Prix, cold starting, teaching. Her thoughts on teaching in that podcast, Corey, were priceless. I need to go back and listen to that again. It makes me want to take her instructor's courses,
Was
because,
that is that her podcast, you?
well, I think she has one, but no, this was Rupert interviewed
Oh.
her. And I should teach, because the thing is, she's so practical about teaching, and she just has so much experience, and I find that to be very very interesting as when people in horses and horsemanship have a lot of experience in like the system, or there, and Karen really thinks in an organized fashion. She has principles and qualities and like all these things that she thinks about as well. Do you have her original book? I have the original copy of Dressage Naturally with the spiral binding and everything.
I
I wish
don't.
I kept the original shirt. I think I wore it out, which was stupid. I should have saved it.
Original shirt, is that what you said?
Uh-huh. It is awesome chocolate. I mean, because her sense of style and art is amazing. She's an artist too, you know. Um, but anyway, she thinks in an organized fashion, so the way that she thinks teaching, it's like these are the non-negotiables. Then we do this. Then we do this. Then this is my role in the world. You know, not. Anyways, I shouldn't even speak for her. But Karen, if you ever come across this, um, awesome for sure. Yeah, the whole podcast. You'd love to meet her. Yeah, you would really love to meet her. Yeah, that's where I met Wendy, up at a Karen clinic in Arlington, I think. So her priorities and principles are so cool. She obviously really loves those things. Yeah. And is I
Lives
guess,
those things.
yeah, yeah. I think, Michael, that's like a huge part of it is her conviction about certain things, and her like that's very what am I trying to say? Uh, it doesn't inspire me to be that way because I think I'm like that anyway, but it is very reassuring and settling to see her sticking to hers. Like these are things that I'm just not going to compromise on.
Mm.
You know, and and doing this is what she's good about, and doing it without judgment, or at least hiding her judgment. How can I get such? I wish she could give me a
Yeah,
pill.
that that you're not as good at that.
No, I wish I was though. Some podcast recently that I shall not say. I was like, someone more annoying to listen to than me. That's Sounds cool. Makes me feel better. And is inspiring to be less annoying. So, anyways, thank you for telling us your stories of being out and about. Speaking of which,
That was fun.
I think we're inspired to do that. And uh, I'm teaching this weekend, so I'm excited to see everybody for the home clinic number 3 here. And Lisa, every single day when I look at the weather, like I even said it this morning, I'm like, Lisa's going to be so happy. Oh, Lisa's going to be so happy. So I'm going to be like 79, 81. So I'm pretty sweet deal for it. Not typical for our August clinic. So, yep. Well, I think that should be it for this week, you guys.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
2 weeks from, not today, 2 weeks from yesterday, I will be in Canada. So we can do the show from
Susan's?
Kevin and Susan's place.
Maybe Susan can be on the show. That would be
That'll be
awesome.
fun.
Yeah. Okay, so not this coming week, but the week after that.
Yeah.
Okay, fun. Yeah, I feel like we're close enough, Lisa, that we should be good. So, considering tomorrow, tomorrow's the day. All right. Well, Michael and I will see you back here next Thursday morning at 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
8:30 Central.
Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.